Hello viewers, welcome to today's session. The topic of today's session is World Population Day. And this particular topic relates to the appreciation course on population and sustainable development and the course Population, Health and Sustainability of the program Master of Arts in Sustainability Science. You must be aware that on 11th July every year the world celebrates World Population Day. So in this session we will learn about the importance of this day, what is the cause of the increasing population of the world, what measures could be taken to mitigate this problem and how we should handle it. So give you a background about the day. Why do we celebrate World Population Day? This day is marked on 11th July every year. And I must tell you one thing, that in 1987, the world population crossed 5 billion. And at that time, we became quite worried about what could happen if the numbers go on increasing like this. What will happen if the world population continues to grow and we have limited resources to feed that population. So, after 2 years in 1989, the world leaders decided to celebrate 11th July as a day to make people aware about the consequences of increasing population and also to tell them about the population dynamics and how that helps in the sustainable development. So all these things were being discussed and deliberated at that time, and so in 1990 we celebrated the first World Population Day. So tomorrow is World Population Day, that is 11th July, and it was the outcome of the deliberations at the General Assembly of the United Nations, which took a stand and which decided to observe this day to make people and the community aware about the implications of the population growth on economy, on society and on the environment. So every year the Population Day is celebrated with a broad theme, and this theme is declared by UN and it revolves around various aspects of the population. For example, there have been themes around reproductive rights, on gender equality, on teenage pregnancies or health of adolescents likewise, or family planning or population as a resource. So over the period of years there have been so many themes, and the whole year the nations strive to work against that or work for that theme to solve a particular burning issue that is coming. So learners, now let us discuss why population becomes, or at present it is becoming, such a important issue nowadays. So it is because of the fact that we are increasingly exploding kind of a thing when it comes to the numbers of the individuals which are there on the planet. When we were 1 billion, 2 billion, 3 billion, when we crossed this billion marks, it took more than 100 years to cross that mark. So around, if you talk about from 1 billion to 2 billion to reach that mark, it took around 120 years. But from 7 billion to 8 billion, and very soon we will be 9 billion. Now the time taken is 12 years, 13 years. So within a short period of time, we are just escalating billion by billion. And that is the cause of the worry. And you must be aware that on 15th November 2022, the world crossed the 8 billion mark. And this is something which is really worrisome. So if every 10 years, 12 years, we are increasing in a billion mark, the resources are not increasing in that manner. We are scarce of the water, soil, land and other resources. So that is why it is one of the important issue that the after World War II particularly, because of the so many factors, so many determinants of population which are there, we are rapidly increasing. And another thing, we have certain facts with us. If we just pinpoint them, we can know that we have been adding 1 billion people to the global population after every 12 to 15 years. Now this is something which is really worrisome. Then if you look at the past data, from 1970 our population has more than doubled to what we were in 1970. So just now what we were saying, that in 1987 we were 5 billion, and look at, in the short span of time we have just crossed 8 billion. And there was a time between 1951 to 1961, that was the situation of the period of population explosion. At that time there was increase in the population to a great extent, and if you look at the causes behind it, you will find that it may be because of the increase in the birth rate, which was going on as usual, but there was a rapid decline in the death rate because of the medical interventions, because of the improvement in the healthcare sector. There was less number of people who were dying, and therefore what happened is that the birth rate continued to rise but the death rate declined, and in that situation we could see that there were increase in the number of the people who are living on the planet. And another interesting thing when you talk about population is that we live in a demographically divided world. Why is it said so? Because all the parts of the world, all the countries, the population is not uniformly distributed. And this is something which is very important for us to consider when we navigate through the population dynamics for future, that there are certain countries where the population is continuously declining. There are several European countries where you find that there are less number of the people. On the other hand, we have certain Asian and the African countries where still the population continues to increase. And according to the predictions, it has been said that by 2050 there will be 8 countries of the world which will be inhabiting around half of the population. Now this is something which explains that why we call it that we live in a demographically divided world. So the countries like India, Nigeria, Pakistan, Democratic Republic of Congo, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Philippines, Egypt, these are the countries where most of the people would be living. Half of the world population would be concentrated in these 8 countries. Now you can imagine what will be the scenario, what will be the global scenario when it comes to business, when it comes to economic growth, when it comes to resource sharing. There will be a lot of interconnected issues which will influence the future of the businesses and other things. So if we talk about India particularly, let us concentrate on that. If we think so, India's population, as we know that it has, according to some data and figures, we have already surpassed China, and we are the most populous country of the world. These are some of the basics of India's population scenario which we must know. But India's growth rate has dropped to less than 1% from 2.3% in 1972. That means that the birth rate is continuously declining in India, and that is true also. After 1980, there has been a decline in the birth rate, and the average number of children born to a woman, which was 4 or 5 in 1970s, that has now declined to 3 or 2 in certain cases. So definitely the birth rate and population growth rate in our country is in a declining trajectory. Another important interesting feature of India's population is that 68% of the India's population belongs to 15 to 64 category and 26% in the 10 to 24 years group. That shows that we are a young country. We have a good number of young population in our country. We have more working hands, and therefore we say that we are a young country. The total replacement level fertility, which is ideal, is considered to be 2.1. And replacement level fertility means that level at which a population eliminates itself. That is, the ideal figure is 2.1. So if the replacement level fertility is 2.1, then it indicates that it is a stable population. So in many of the states of our country, we have achieved this replacement level fertility. However, there is also, not only it is a demographically divided world, but in our country also, if we see, the demographics is very, very different. So for Kerala, for example, long back we have achieved this replacement level fertility level of 2.1. It's been very long that we have achieved. But there are certain states in UP where still the population replacement level fertility is around 3. So that explains that how the population structure varies across different states of our country. And according to UN estimates, it is said that India's population will reach 1.6 billion in 2050 and before settling at 1.53 billion in 2100. So the future predictions, according to the models which are there, according to the predictions which are made, still India will continue to grow for another few decades. The population will go on increasing, and there is something which we must understand, that despite being said that the birth rate has been declining, we are continuously growing because we have more number of people in the reproductive age bracket, and because of the population momentum, and as it is said that we are a young country, we have most of the people in the age group of 15 to 64. So that is one of the reasons that India's population continues to increase despite having reached the replacement level fertility, and also the we are talking about the declining birth rate. So what determines the population at any place? What are the determinants of population? So one of the important determinant of population is birth rate, death rate, immigration and emigration. These are 4 factors which decide the population at any given place. So birth rate refers to number of births per 1,000 people during a given period in a population. How many children are being born per 1,000 individuals? So that is the birth rate of the population. Likewise, death rate refers to number of deaths occurring per 1,000 individuals in a given period in a population. How many people are dying per 1,000 individuals? Immigration is people who are coming from outside, from other countries, and emigration is movement of the people across the borders. Now, immigration and emigration are not only important as per looking at the international scenario, but within the country, if also you will observe that this is one of the factors which explains why so many places are becoming crowded, and on the other hand we find that there is very less population density in certain areas. So if you look at the metropolitan cities of our country like Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, so these places are attracting lot of people to go there. Lot of migrants are there because of the factors like increasing employment opportunities and better prospects of living. We don't go into this at present, but this also explains the population of any place. So the place may be heavily populated despite having low birth rate, but maybe the migration patterns are like that. It may attract a lot of people from other regions, so that's why the population is increasing. So the figure which you can see on the screen, that also explains that what are the determinants of population. Natality refers to the birth rate. It is the another name for the birth rate which we just discussed. Mortality refers to the death rate which we discussed. Immigration, as it is said that people coming in from any place, and emigration means how the people are moving out of the place, and all these factors determine the population density. How many people are living in a per square kilometer area, that is the population density. If you understand this in a common language, we know that there are certain areas which are very densely populated. You find a lot of people living in a small piece of land. However, if you go to villages, if you go to some other places which are far-flung places, you will find that very few people are living on a vast piece of land. So you will find scattered type of habitation, scattered type of residential areas. That explains the population density. So if the population density is more, then there is a more competition. There is more competition for basic necessities of food, water, electricity, space, etc. And if you look at the conditions which are prevailing in the metropolitan cities of like for example Delhi, Mumbai, you can easily say that these places are having more population density. So what does it pose to? What are the challenges of increasing population? Yes, increasing population not only puts pressure on the natural resources of the earth, but also it has social and economic issues associated with it. We very well know that when it comes to saying that what are the problems we are facing as a country, what problems are we facing, we always say that it is because of the huge population that we have in our country. And whatever development step we undertake, whatever plans we make, at the end what happens is that because while we are implementing it, we find that there is a huge population base, there is a huge number of individuals which are fighting for it, and it all goes in vain. So there are social problems. We are very well understand what are the environmental problems, because whatever the environmental strain on the natural resources, for example the land competition, the usage of the water, underground water, surface water, all the types of the resources which are being mined from the earth's surface, it is all because fulfilling the needs of the ever growing population of our country. Then social problems, if we look into, see, we have less employment opportunities. There is a suppression of the people. There are a lot of crimes happening because we have not been able to let the population grow in a very uniform manner, in the sense that we are not able to provide equal opportunities to all the individuals. So that creates a kind of a social unrest, and we know that the divide between the rich and the poor is continuously increasing. So many a times it happens that the rich become richer and the poor gets poorer, and the divide is widening day by day. So because of which the social issues are coming up, and of course economic strain on the resources. The demand is more, but the supply is not up to the mark. We have not been able to create job opportunities. Employment opportunities are very, very limited. Educational aspirations of the poor people and the other classes of the people are also not equally made. So there is always a fight for the seats and other things. And most importantly, we are very well aware that by 2030, we have to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. These Sustainable Development Goals are not directly, you can say that there is no one such goal on population, but when you look at all the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, we find that in a way or other, they are related to the issues of population. For example, the SDG 1 and 2, no poverty, zero hunger, human health and well-being, inclusive education, economic disparities, opportunities, justice, all these sustainable development goals are one way or the other are related to population. So if we address the issues of population, if we are able to bring down the population, if we are able to provide healthy environment, then we will be quick in achieving the sustainable development goals. And it has been stated in many of the reports that policies that aim to achieve sustainable development, if they do not consider the population dynamics of any place, will not be fruitful in the long run. So we must know about the population dynamics of any region, of any place, of any country, so as to frame the objectives for future. We must know, we must have proper understanding that what will be the population structure in the times to come. what will be the rural, what will be the urban population, what will be the sex ratio of the population at a given place, and then only it will be fruitful and it will be useful. And because of this improperly defined strategies and overlooking the population dynamics whenever we frame such policies, then it has an unequal impact. So population growth at one end and making people or keeping people devoid of the resources is other end. So it is a kind of a unequal impact, because it is the poor, it is those who are suppressed, marginalized, they suffer the most. They are mostly deprived of the basic amenities. They do not have avenues for improvement of their living, and most of the times it happens that the poor struggle more, because of which we are not able to fulfill the aspirations of the population of our country. So when it comes to carbon emissions, when it comes to resource usage, when it comes to exploitation, industrialization, everywhere we find that population has an impact and there is an unequal impact. And this is clearly evident when we look into the scenarios of the developed and the developing countries. So developed countries are using most of the share of the resources. Their population may be less than the developing countries, but their ecological footprint, their carbon footprint is much more than the developing countries. So that explains that how the number of individuals at any place decide the environmental conditions, and also they have a differential impact on the various types of the resources and overall planetary conditions. So we very well know that Earth is the only planet where the life is possible, and if we continue to live like this, because it is not the number of the people but also how they are living, that also has an influence. So accordingly, if you are using the same, if you continue to live like this, if you continue to emit the resources like this, we would be requiring 1.7 Earths by 2050, which is generally not possible. Another important population things which we must understand is the aging population. As it has been said that there are several countries which are struggling to have more population, to have more number of the people, and there are certain countries where the age-old people, citizens are more. So this is the population dynamics which needs to be considered. So in 2030, it is being predicted that the older persons will be outnumbering the number of the children, and there will be more old persons over 60 than the youths are there, and 2/3 of the world's population live in the developing regions. So most of it is the developing countries in the times to come will be inhabited by the people who are age old, and their number is growing faster than in the developed countries. So in 2050 it is expected that nearly 8 in 10 of the older people will be living in the developing countries. So are we prepared for that scenario where we will not be having the working hands but will be having more of the dependent population? So these aging population is also an important factor which we must understand, and then to see that the population is a resource, to see that human beings are a resource, we must make efforts for their social economic development. And it is important that today on the World Population Day we make an effort to see that how social and economic measures can work in our favor, and how we can see that population is a resource. We have to make use of this demographic dividend. Instead it becomes a demographic disaster for us. So we have seen the projections are clear that we will be continuing to growing by 2050 or so and beyond. So if it is the state, then we must see that our people, our population is skilled, is educated, is employed, is healthy. If we are able to invest in humans as a person, then we will be able to make use of that resource. So it is very important that we consider human beings not just in terms of the numbers, but we consider them as the center of any development plans that we are making. So for any developmental activity, human beings are at the center, and we must see that how we are able to equip them with the skills which are necessary for them to survive in the future, that they are well educated. And in this respect, the women empowerment, you say, or you call it a gender equality, that is very, very important. So women constitute half of the world's population. So if the half of the world population is unskilled, is illiterate, is dependent financially, then we cannot think of progressing. So we must make an effort to see that the women also get equal opportunities. They also have a role in the decision making, and then only we can see that we are able to fulfill the objectives for which the World Population Day was envisaged in 1989. So we can say that all these measures have to be implemented at the local, regional, national and the global level. The world community comes together to celebrate the World Population Day. So on this note, let us end today's session, and I once again make you aware about the World Population Day that is being celebrated on 11th July every year. Thank you so much.